What's happening, everybody? Tyler Pyburn here with Phil DiMartino. Welcome into another edition of the 5 Tool Productions video podcast. Is that what we call this?
Sure.
The Prod Pod. That's what it is. Anyways, it's the Prod Pod. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today we've got a fun topic. It's never not a fun topic, though, is it really?
Fair.
This is private social networks. It's something that you're pretty hot on. Before we kind of dive into it and really explain, what is a private social network? When we hear that, because you're hearing it and you're seeing it in blog posts all over the place, what does it actually mean?
Yeah, it's actually something that first came up about a year ago. It came on my radar, reading posts from, kind of people who are marketing analysts and things like that, looking at the landscape and saying, what can we expect to happen over the next year, couple of years? And I think it's really come to fruition, is the idea of these social networks kind of shifting in purpose and in practice to be less about blasting hundreds of things to the world and way more about finding ways to connect one-on-one and individually with friends, family, and brands as well. And the Facebook algorithm change in January 2018 really accelerated this process a lot because it changed. It puts all this focus on meaningful personal interactions.
Yep.
And I think we saw a lot of things happen in the last year, and we'll continue to see more happen that are going to push these social networks to be, that's going to make it a little more of a misnomer. The term social network, I think, is going to be a little more of a misnomer in that these are just going to be like connection engines, right? Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and LinkedIn. The term social network is probably going to mean less and less in practice moving forward, and it will probably mean more something like, a connection engine, in my opinion.
Well, one of the things that's interesting, too, is Mike Prue, one of our friends, actually just recently wrote his kind of predictions for 2019.
Yeah. Didn't he do one that was basically like what's going to suck in 2019?
Yeah, it's really like what are things going to die off?
Yeah,
and one of the things he mentioned was the social media burnout. It's real, and how
Yeah.
people are kind of like feel like they're always on their phones. One and two, how they're just being hit from all different angles with so many different messages.
Yep.
And kind of his reason against that, well, said that's happening right now, whether you like it or not. People, my wife's another example. I feel like I use my wife as an example an awful lot.
Yeah.
You're a good example, Diane. But
Thank you.
when I used her as an example, she literally just bought the Apple Watch
Okay.
solely because she wanted to scale back on her social time.
Okay.
But what I do think when it comes to the connections part, and she just wants to be tied in with individual people and really kind of connecting one-on-one with people, I think that's where we're going more in line, as opposed to I'm on here and I'm seeing messages from people all over the world that I really haven't connected with or talked to in forever. Instead, no, I really only want to focus on these set handful of people really at a certain time.
Yeah, and I think Facebook as kind of the linchpin of a lot of this stuff, just being based on the size of their audience, I think in a lot of ways they're leading the charge, and there's a couple of specific ways.
I think they have to lead the charge given everything that's probably taken place with them.
Well, sure, they have all their own stuff going on, and every week it seems like there's something else coming out that's a negative press about Facebook. But they have so many. Facebook has so much going on in terms of shifting to more one-to-one private interactions, which seems like a really negative thing for brands, but it doesn't have to be. So a few of those things that are happening, I think the two headlines are Messenger, way more of a focus on Messenger, more and more resources and time and energy goes to Messenger, and they're thinking about, as a marketer, you have to think about the ways that's gonna impact you in terms of serving ads to Messenger, right? That's already an option. So, does that become a part of your strategy? Is that super intrusive? Do people, will people respond really negatively to that? Does it feel like it's a breach of privacy? All those questions come up around Messenger for me.
Absolutely.
And again, thinking about myself as the end user, I don't want to get ads in Messenger because that feels hyper intrusive.
My thing is the minute I start to get ads inside Messenger is the minute that I stop using Messenger.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, for me, that's really what ends up happening. I use Messenger and WhatsApp quite a bit to connect with people that aren't on my text messages. Really, texts are for people that I talk to all the time.
Right.
And you and I, we use GChat all day, every day, almost sometimes too much. Like at night when we'll be texting one another through GChat. It's kind of strange. But if we were to start seeing ads there, I would probably start to look for another platform that didn't have those at that moment in time. And until we see a day that they all have ads, which very well could happen. But
Right, and I think when we serve ads for 5 Tool, which we do, First of all, we try to be really specific about our targeting because we want to reach the right audience.
Yep.
From the standpoint of a spend. We
I
don't wanna
care
spend
about
too
hitting
much.
the right audience versus the mass audience.
Right. But one of the options in there is to serve ads in Messenger, and we don't ever do that. We always uncheck serve ads in Messenger. So if they are getting served, if you are getting ads served to you in Messenger from Fivetool, let us know because there's a setting in our ads manager that we're missing.
And
But-
we'll write a scathing article about Facebook again. So.
But the other part of it that I do think is more advantageous to brands specific to Facebook is private groups, and lots more brands are using this. You see it, be kind of most effective potentially for like software companies and things like that, where they might have a user group. But it can work for anybody. It's just that you have to find a value, right? Even if you don't have people who are opted in as users of a software, you can still create a community there. And I think more and more that's going to be something that brands are going to want to look to on Facebook specifically, is either creating or finding communities, little pockets of the right people, and you have to stop.
Hyper niche, hyper focused.
Exactly.
A great example of one that I belong to that I just found out is actually run by a local organization that does a lot of AV stuff. It's audio, AV production equipment, and production equipment and talk. So it's basically a lot of guys that do kind of production events. Some of them might be selling their equipment, but this other company is the one that actually started it, and they use it as a way to sell all their old gear all the time.
Yep.
But they partake in the conversation all the time and just
They're a
talk about
genuine
what's
member of the
they're a
community.
genuine member of the community trying to say, hey, did you see has anybody tested out these lights just yet? Has anyone started using this switcher just yet? But they're very active inside that community. But they'll also use it as a way to try to generate sales for their used and new equipment. They also show, we just got this in, buy this stuff.
Right.
So it's interesting there.
Right. So there's their ultimate purpose. You think about it with any business. Your ultimate purpose is to sell X product, but along the way, along the sales journey, people don't want to just be sold to. They want you to be a partner in creating value for them, and that's how you should be thinking about creating content generally. And that's a place where these private communities on Facebook and other social networks can really work to your advantage as long as you treat them the right way.
So with that in mind, should you start your own private Facebook group? I'm just saying, starting very small right now, looking very granular. Should a company, a small business, start its own private Facebook group right now?
I think as long as you have an idea of what kind of content you can provide that's valuable, yeah, I definitely think you should. And I think you have to keep in mind, like, do I have a big enough audience to start with? Do I have a list? But for most people, yeah, I mean, there's a path to it. Maybe the answer isn't necessarily go out and do it right now, but start thinking about what kind of a community might make sense as a value add for your audience or your potential customers, right?
Yeah.
Whether if you're a membership group or a software company, it's a lot more obvious. But if you're just a company that sells something, there's still a common thread between your audience of something they want and that they're going to like to interact with when they go online, that you can give them, and you can be the resource for them. And I think that kind of thinking about being the person being the company that brings that hub together for this group of people, that can be tremendously valuable. So maybe don't start it today, but maybe today start thinking about what value can we kind of bring to, and again, I think you have to get out of the mindset of Facebook of thinking about things in terms of 20,000, 100,000, million views.
Yep.
And you need to start and really narrow it down and say 200 or 300 or 500 or 1,000 really
Depends
high
upon
quality views.
your audience, right? If you started saying that we are a fly fishing company in upstate New York,
Right.
I want to focus on fly fishing in upstate New York in this lakes region, right? Like
Right.
that's a very hyper focused group.
Right.
And obviously it will grow over time,
Right.
but you can't think and say, well, I need to hit 20,000 people. There aren't 20,000 fly fishers that know about your brand right then and there. So slowly but surely building that small community.
And I
helps.
think that is one of the things people struggle with, though, is they're used to such crazy big numbers on social networks that sometimes these small communities don't seem like big wins. But I'll tell you that 300 or 500 or 1,000 really, really engaged people who are, in a community talking about things that are directly related to your brand, in a community that you're a part of, that's a lot more valuable than 20,000 people who couldn't care less about you and maybe watched a video for 1 second.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a big difference there in terms of, value of relationship and value of lead. So I think it's an important distinction.
Use anybody. It doesn't matter what your town what town you live in. Every town has them.
we have one,
Facebook, I have one, and it's probably
It's a
one
great
of
resource.
the best. Where's the favorite Chinese restaurants in town? What delivers late night?
Yeah.
Where should I go take my kids to the dentist? Right, your town community page is probably the best example that it's not marketing whatsoever. It's just conversations that are happening on a hyper local level, that people are really helping one another. And I think that goes back to what we were saying in the very beginning, connecting with folks that are like-minded that can really help one another, whatever your business may be, whether it's audio visual, whether it's local dentist, whatever that might be. How can it help someone? How can it help the end user, really, right?
Yeah, so I think just to circle back, this whole conversation is about, the shift to more private social networks. By necessity, this is happening just by the pure amount of stuff that's on these social networks.
Yep.
So this is, the idea of organic reach is definitely going away. Targeted ads are part of it. You can't do everything through ad spends, nor should you want to.
No.
This thinking about ways to leverage these one-on-one or one to small number of audience connections is something that's going to just become increasingly more important as time goes on.
Absolutely. It's awesome. Very cool. All right. He is Phil. I am Tyler. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll see you next time.